But when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate them from one another, as the shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep on his right, and the goats on the left. In the previous study, I proposed that Christ, as Son of Man, came in his glory almost 2,000 years ago, confirmed by the many scriptures stating that he is presently at the right hand of the Father, there to reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet. I also propose that the parables in Matthew chapter 25 are a continuation of the Lord's discourse beginning in Matthew 24 in response to the three questions his disciples asked him after Jesus said the temple of God would be destroyed. When will these things be, they asked, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? Jesus answers the first question when he tells his disciples they will be delivered up to tribulation and hated by all nations for his name's sake. In other words, these things and more would transpire in their lifetimes once they were empowered to take the gospel to the rest of the world. And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? I believe these two questions are related and do not refer to the return of the Lord sometime in our future, but to his coming to his disciples on the day of Pentecost. The end of the age referring to the transition from the age of law to the age of grace we're in now. This is the end Jesus speaks about in Matthew 24:14. In the very next verse, Jesus says, therefore, connecting what he is about to say with what he's already said. He then speaks of the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place. This refers to Daniel 11:31 and 12:11. In both of these verses, we're told that the daily sacrifice is taken away in order for this abomination to be set up. Some believe this refers to the literal destruction of the temple of God by Titus and the Roman army in 70 CE, which may well be true, since the literal destruction of the temple of God may reflect the decline of the spiritual temple of God that followed after. The abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. Here's my take. The holy place represents the place of ministry, for up until Christ, only the priests were allowed to enter this part of the temple of God. And the abomination, this is defined by the following in Proverbs. These 6 things the Lord hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift in running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among brethren. What is taken away? The daily sacrifice. Might this refer to the message of self-denial Jesus taught in Matthew 16:24 through 28? And wouldn't the abomination of a proud look stand squarely against this heart and mind of self-sacrifice? Now, let's come back to the parable of the faithful and wise servant, beginning in Matthew 24:45. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household, to give them food in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing. Assuredly, I say to you that he will make him ruler over all his goods. But if that evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and will cut him in two, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. When we pay close attention to what Jesus says, we find that the evil servant is the faithful and wise servant. So what happens between faithful and evil? He falls away because he says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, begins beating his fellow servants and eating and drinking with the drunkards. By no means is beating or eating and drinking literal, but represents partaking of that self-righteous spirit and mindset that was indicative of the scribes and Pharisees in Jesus' day. For this reason, the evil servant is cut in two or separated to the goats, given his portion with the hypocrites. One servant, but two completely opposing positions. Might this indicate the return of the old self in place of the new, and relate to both an individual and collective perspective? Could we bring this idea to the following? But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. 2 men will be in the field, and 2 women will be grinding at the mill. Is this literal, figurative, or both? Might the 2 men refer to the first man Adam and the last Adam, the old self and the new self, while the 2 women to the 2 covenants and those born of them? One will be taken and one left. Based on the context, the one taken is swept away by the flood. This is clearly not a literal flood, so I am inclined to think it refers to Revelation 12:15, where we see the serpent spewing water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, which represents Jerusalem above, or the believers in Christ, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. This is not a literal deluge, but an overwhelming torrent of deception, aligning with the very first thing Jesus said to his disciples in Matthew 24:4 and 5. Now, let's come back to the parable of the sheep and goats. When we read through the passages, it's easy enough to see that Christ is not considering one's belief, one's deeds or actions. This stays in keeping with the principle of sowing and reaping, where Paul says, "Let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith." This also aligns with what Jesus says in the following: "He who is unjust, let him be unjust still. He who is filthy, let him be filthy still. He who is righteous, let him be righteous still. He who is holy, let him be holy still. And behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me, to give to everyone according to his work." My reward is with me, to give to everyone according to his work. Work, deeds, actions. Is this just not another way of saying we reap what we sow? As for the unjust and filthy and the righteous and holy, old self, new self. Makes sense when we remember that the old self is consigned to death, while the new self is our life hidden in Christ. In keeping with the idea of the old self and new self, might sheep denote the new and goat the old? Work, deeds, actions. But not just any deed or action, but those that spring from love. Let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Much to consider, so I'll close at this point. But be sure to join me for the next study, where I will share a very precious understanding with you regarding Matthew 25. Until then, may God bless you in your walk with Him, and I sincerely thank you for being a part of Grain of Wheat Publishing.